UFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications options. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatterspodcast1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Just a question of taste with you, well, you've gone sour. You want the world plus everything, but you won't work an hour. And now your questions of guilt creeping and you go and buy her flowers. You throw away the dreams we had, boy. I won't allow it. I said we're gonna fall out. Let's see you get out. I think we're gonna fall out. So shut your mouth.
Good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is the professionals, and if I had £1 for every time somebody said bad day at the office today, I'd have about £165. But yes, welcome. We're going to try and instill a little bit of positivity. 9 wins out of 9. Alexander Isak, 8 goals in 8 games. And you know what? There's still a lot to be happy about as a Newcastle United fan. Let's not get one result get us down. And yeah, look, it was coming. I think we saw it on Wednesday. We saw the signs of it on against Wolverhampton Wanderers. We saw a little bit of lethargy coming in, a little bit of tiredness, a little bit of wayward passing, and Bournemouth came and they did the business yesterday. They really did. Bournemouth, great football team. Got to take your hat off to them. Performed really well. And bearing in mind as well the injuries that Bournemouth have got, that was nowhere near their full strength 11. So for me, yeah, it is the right thing to say. A bad day at the office. Newcastle's got a week off now to regroup, to look at things from a different perspective, and hopefully bounce back, which is what it's all about. Going to Southampton next week. Going to be a tough ask. Southampton have found, albeit not results in the last couple of weeks, seem to have found that little bit of form. Again, going to be one of those difficult things to go to, but you'd like to think it's an injured Magpie that goes along to Southampton and gets the result, not a Magpie feeling sorry for itself. So that's my say. We'll move on to Stu and Mitch. Good evening, chaps. Mitch.
Good evening.
Mitch, I've got to say, what is that top? It's another classic because people will be asking, so I'm going to get in before anybody else.
It's Vasco da Gama from Brazil.
Quality, mate. Quality. Really good.
And a little tip if you're ordering one, it's Kappa, to go 2 sizes up.
Oh, great. There you go. So if anybody wants one of those.
That's super slim fit. I'm really glad I did a little bit of research before I ordered it.
All right, Stu. Somebody earlier on, before we came on, I said, come on, Stu, give us a bit of Penman positivity. So we're doing a Penman when it's a 3-1. Now we'll go for some Penman positivity on a Sunday. So have you got any?
I hope so. Well, what we've just come off is a record equaling winning sequence. And to be fair, it's the first time we've done it in the top flight in the same season. So that's history in itself. And it had to end sometime. I think most of us were expecting it to end after this group of games, maybe a Man City away, maybe after a few injuries. But we didn't have that excuse. But as I said, it had to end sometime. But my take on yesterday, it was the same as Old Trafford. It was the same as the Emirates Stadium. We got what we deserved. So for me, there's no gripes, there's no hard luck stories, no VAR injustice that we can complain about. We were dismantled by a better team. And they had more energy, they had more focus, they had more belief, they had a better game plan than us and a desire to win that we didn't look like capable of matching from the outset. And that's it. We're just going to take it on the chin, or chins in our case, and accept it and move on. I don't want to come out with a Steve Bruce, dust ourselves down and that, because we're better than that. And where did it go wrong? Apart from the obvious lethargy, there were signs for me during the Wolves game, the first half hour during Wolves, that things were starting to creak. But had Eddie Howe made some changes, bearing in mind he didn't have much options for changes, there would have been a big outcry. And it's hard to change an unbeaten team, especially when they're winning every game as well, not just unbeaten. So, was it subconscious belief that we just had to turn up because of the winning sequence? You know, could it have been a bit of that? Did they take their eyes off the prize? Eddie Howe warned in the his press conference about complacency, and I'm sure he wasn't, but the players are human beings, aren't they? And for me, both our wingers delivered their worst performance of the season, and as did the fullbacks. And when you don't have the width performing, and in over 100 minutes of football, we couldn't contrive to give Isak a shot on goal, then we're not going to win any football games. And that's not me being sour grapes because I had a decent bet on Bet365. I thought someone was going to get sacked in their office because they'd give even money for Isak to have a shot on target. And it never happened. We were pulled out of shape all over the park. You know, it ends up being where you've got Joe Linton going AWOL and Tonali having to do covering for him. And our first touch was that bad yesterday. I thought Shola must have been training them all week, because it was as like there was 11 shoulders on the pitch. You know, his second touch is a tackle, isn't it? And it was just so un-Newcastle. And I hope it is a one-off, but it does, for me, it highlights the lack of depth that we have, where we're not able to make changes without the team being drastically reduced in quality. And I'm sure we'll come on to potential transfers, etc., later on the show. But we were deservedly beat. The club record stays intact. But I believe that we've got a team that cares, and I believe we've got a team that will want to right the many wrongs that they did yesterday. And I think we'll go out against Southampton and give them a good hiding. But we can't win every game, and I'm glad there hasn't been as much of an outcry as there would have been had we lost like that earlier in the season. I think people are more appreciative of the efforts that the team have made with some fantastic results in that 9-game period. But as I said at the start, it had to end sometime, and it ended yesterday. Now we just have to start a new one, don't we? So that was my take on yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, the only disappointment for me, really, other than the result, was that we had, a lot of people walking out. And I know this is a modern football fan thing, people walking out of grounds, but with 15 minutes left on the clock and Newcastle still at 3-1, to see so many people walk out of the stadium did disappoint me and people around us. When we stay at the end, we'll clap the team off. Not because they put a great performance in yesterday. We clapped the team off yesterday because they've just gone 9 out of 9. They deserved that, and it's caught up with them. And unfortunately, losing the likes of Yankuba Minte and Elliot Anderson has robbed us of having potential players who could come on and make a difference. Those two players would have made a difference yesterday, no doubt about it, either in the starting lineup. And for me, this is this is the bigger picture. But some people
they both scored today, Steve, as well.
Yeah, exactly. Some people don't see the bigger picture, and Elliot Anderson is involved in a team that's is not having a fluke run of results. They are actually giving it a good go to try and win the league title this year. And then you've got Yankuba Minte at Brighton, who, he's been in and out of the team, but is part of a decent setup at Brighton. But make no mistake about it, Newcastle's on the right track. It's a setback, and it's a disappointing one. It's one that'll get the realists looking, going, I told you so, and getting those people who were, thinking we were world beaters, maybe brings them back down to earth. But, gives us time to have a week to get ourselves sorted, a bit of perspective. Other teams around us have got European football, which of course brings its own issues. And teams have got to play each other. If you look at the fixtures next week, Manchester United have got to play Chelsea next week. That's a big, big fixture, especially with Manchester City starting to find form again. Okay, they're playing Ipswich today, but they're 2-0 up are scoring goals again. So that's going to be an interesting one as far as the top of the table is concerned. Could be managerial changes. Look at Spurs. Spurs completely, out of sorts again today at Everton, losing by the odd goal in 5. And then Manchester United, of course, who are certainly the laughingstock, I think, of the so-called top 6 these days, with another shameful defeat in front of their supporters. Wonder how many rats and mice were running around that ground and pitch today. Mitch, your views then on the Bournemouth game yesterday?
Perspective's always a useful thing, isn't it? First of all, fair play to Bournemouth. They were the better team yesterday by a country mile. From the first minute to the last, they were hungry. They played with a desire that we didn't seem to match yesterday, which is, I find, unusual. The so-called game too far for us, I guess. It was disappointing that, we've had a load of games where we could have had 3 or 4 different people picked as man of the match. And yesterday was the game where 5 or 6 of them picked to have their worst game of the season. And so, and I think it is frustrating as it is. I keep reminding myself, in my time supporting Newcastle United, I've seen we lose 4-1 more than I have seen we string more than 6 wins in a row together. And that's the kind of run we've been on. That we should remember, I guess, if you also add in some of those games and where we've had to travel to put that run together, it's taken a lot out of it. And that, and a lack of options from the bench was seriously obvious yesterday. That was there a game changer Saturday, or was there just more of the same? And I think that is should be a message, I would hope, during this window when they're discussing what they want to do and where they want to go, because I think other teams seem to be able to influence games from the bench more than we have this season. But at the same time, if I just sit here and criticise everybody, it takes away from Bournemouth, who were absolutely outstanding. There's no doubt about that. And I think technically that's another game where Eddie got done by a manager. That's the first time I've seen somebody work a way around the press. He fought fire with fire. Basically, their press was better than our press and a bit better thought out. And the hunted in packs. And I think everybody's saying that the signs were there during Wolves. You're quite right. We rode well up a little bit against Wolves. Wolves, if that Wolves game had finished 3-2, I don't think we could have been too upset. So we've got a week to put it right now, and I think that's important forward. That's something we didn't have last season. So it's how we react to this next weekend is, I think, quite important for the remainder of the season. Quite important for the remainder of the season. It's the first time for a while I've seen us second most of the second phase balls, for example. That's usually a real strength on our part, or it has been in that last 9 games. And yesterday, we just weren't at the races. Dan Burn looked all over the place in the first half. Worst game for Lewis Hall I've seen in a long time. You could go through the whole team. We got nothing from wide players yesterday. And Isaac was starved of service. And as good as Isaac is, he can't do it on his own. He needs the service. And so lacking that, it was always going to be uphill. Once we equalised, there was that little glimmer that we're back in it here and we can sort ourselves out. Once they went 2-1 in front, from there, I actually couldn't see us getting back.
Yeah, it was interesting. It was a hard-time chat that I had with a few people, and yeah, they were right. I was wrong. I was still optimistic we could get back with a couple of changes, but it wasn't to be. And yeah, that's unfortunate. AJ, good evening. Good to see you in the chat. Still chasing top four, 1 foot in the final of a cup. No easy games in the Premier League. Still a lot of football to play, in my opinion. Yano says Willock's forms fell off a cliff. Where was Target? As much as we've slated Darren, we've all known he was right about Murphy. And Percy Streets Henderson says, people are saying we can't be tired on 1 game a week, but don't understand how robust our training methods are. When's Wilson back, says Craig. Only Tonali, with any credit from yesterday, says Mick. I would agree, Tonali and Dubravka. Dubravka had to do some work yesterday, and he probably kept the score down. There's no doubt about that. And Jack says Eddie has to have a think. Now, as Bournemouth have shown Arsenal how to get about us at home, and that needs to be looked at for the semi-final second leg. And Davey says, I'd like to have seen Miley come on for a wasteful Joe Linton, who was miles off it, in my opinion, yesterday. And Anthony, we did pay respects to Dennis Law yesterday. He says, always liked him and a great character. But yeah, lots of tributes and that coming in for the King of Old Trafford. Okay. We are going to bring in a guest today. Stu texted me earlier on and asked if I minded bringing somebody on. So it's a good evening. A Chelsea fan, Simon. Hello, mate.
Good evening, gents. All good.
All right, Simon.
Good to see you.
Good, thank you.
What about you, Stu?
Last month or so, but not many left to go now.
Right. The reason I asked Simon to come on is he's an ex-friend, not like a friend that I used to have and don't like anymore. He's a Twitter friend. And he's what I'd probably like to describe as an old school football fan. As you can see, he's wearing a bit Chelsea bit there, but he's supported Chelsea all his life. He's not post-Abramovich, he's pre-Abramovich, and lives in the Midlands and goes to every game, home and away. So some of the away games are closer than home games. And if anyone follows him on Twitter, you'll see he has his cans on the train and everything else, and just loves his football. So I was having a bit chat with him yesterday evening after our, well, you can't really call it performance, but after our result. And I asked him if he'd be interested to join us to give a different perspective, because we can get quite insular in our bubble talking about Newcastle. So, I mean, as much as Simon loves Chelsea, I don't want him talking about Chelsea. I want him to give us a Newcastle perspective from a Chelsea view. And the fact that they were able to spend so much money, is he in agreement that we should be able to, or are the rules in favour? And just basically what's the views from around the country about Newcastle United? Because me and Mitch know from the Middle East how we're reflected on, and everyone back home knows exactly what people in Newcastle think about it. So I just thought it'd be something different and something interesting. So we weren't talking about a heavy defeat all evening, and asked Simon to join us to give us a view from the Chelsea end. So what do you think, Si?
Oh, thanks for the invite, Stu, and it's nice to meet you outside of your morning walks. I think, take a step back, I'm looking at it globally. Top four this season, top three for me is on for Liverpool, Arsenal, and City. City have had their blip. They're going to finish strongly. I think fourth is going to be Newcastle, Chelsea, Villa. Be there, miss them, and of course it might be fifth that goes into Champions League. I think one thing that you've jumped in, so I've heard some of what you're saying. I think what favour is no European football. I also think what favour is most of that team have had a taste of league football. And as a consequence, sometimes you get hungrier for it, you know. If you've not experienced it, you don't always appreciate what it's like. If you've experienced it, sometimes that can add a little couple of percent to your performances. If I'm also looking at Newcastle as a side, one thing before we talk about yourselves, the Premier League, I've said this before on Twitter, every season is more brutal. You know, looking back at what Bournemouth did to you, Bournemouth did the same to us in the second half. We failed to capitalise on a really good first half last week. So was it a surprising result? Yes, it was, but it's a brutal league. It's an absolute brutal league, and it gets harder and harder by the season. So these results can happen. And I think one of you guys said that you just won 9 on the spin. You know, you can't take away from that. You can't, 10 on the spin. Those are unusual numbers for any club, particularly in the Premier League. But if I look at your team from my perspective, it was a close game at Stamford Bridge. Like so many games, we just got over the line by 1 goal. Isaac is a player, or Isaac, I'm not Swedish, is a player that I think is coveted by most teams in the Premier League. He's not quite Haaland. I don't like to compare strikers. They work in different ways, don't they? He's, without putting too much pressure on me, reminds me of Henry in his size and his gracefulness. He's a bit of a Rolls Royce player, isn't he? He's very clinical, very efficient. I think one other player that I've always rated, who's not there at the moment, I don't know what your take is on, if you feel you miss him, is Pope. I wish Chelsea had gone for him. I think I remember the game at Bournemouth, was it last season, when he must have saved about 8 certain goals. And sometimes I think as a defence, you look behind you, don't you? And I'm not digging your current goalkeeper out, but if you know you've got a better goalkeeper behind you, that gives you a little air of certainty. And I've seen that at Chelsea over the years. For 14 years, we had Cech and then Courtois. And it was no coincidence that position is so important. You go back to Brian Clough with Peter Shilton. I'm that old. So I think you're in a very good position to finish 4th. I'm not just saying that because I'm massively outnumbered here, but I think you've also got a bit of know-how in midfield. You can see a game out. From my point of view, Chelsea, the inexperience is showing. We can't see games out. The manager's not got that experience. And whilst I'd say that Casado and Lavia, if their players in midfield too, are as good as anyone, they don't have that know-how. They don't have that edge, I don't think. They don't understand how to grind a game out at this level. They've got to learn very quickly. So that's kind of it as a starter for 10, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I take on what you were saying about the goalkeeping situation, and I think it's something that just about every Newcastle fan would think it needs to be remedied in the summer at the latest, and get a number 1 in that can use his feet as well, because that's probably the biggest criticism of Pope. And in that 9-game winning sequence, Pope wasn't in goal, he was injured. It was Dubravka, who, before he came in, I think everyone would have been happy to sell. But just to give you a bit of figure, Simon, they conceded more goals yesterday in 1 game than they had in that 9-game winning run.
Oh, wow. So
it was a blip. It was an anomaly. And we were talking earlier on, and thankfully we've got Southampton away next week. So there's a great opportunity for us to right the wrongs. And regarding Isaac, he is coveted by everyone. And I like it. I like the fact he's getting linked with all these people, all these clubs who can't afford him. You've got the same with Cole Palmer. Every top team has at least one exceptional talent. And the key is to make sure they get as much help as they can to perform at their greatest level. And that was what we were guilty of not doing yesterday. And then you're playing Wolves tomorrow night. That's right, isn't it? You've got Wolverhampton at home tomorrow.
Yeah.
So after watching Newcastle play Wolves last week, for me, the flatter to deceive. They've got all the willingness in the world to want to do something, but I don't think they've got the ability or the conviction to go over the line. And I can't see anything but a comfortable home win for Chelsea, and that will put you above us as well as Manchester City now. So when we've come off a week when people were talking about Newcastle being in the title race, we'll be down to 6 and 6 points behind Nottingham Forest. But I think at the start of the season, most Newcastle fans would have taken Europe. We don't have the depth of squad as you have. You've got a European squad and you've got a league squad. So that should help you going into the rest of the season as well, to keep those players fresh. I think Chelsea have been found out so much is the Premier League squad, if you want to call it that. They've been having to play twice a week when earlier in the season it was just once a week. All the games over Christmas. So I don't know if Mitch has got a question for you, but I just wanted to ask, and then I'll pass you over to Mitch, is regarding the way the Premier League is with the rulings and the financial fair play, etc. Do you think that was done because we're all paranoid and think it's all done just to spite Newcastle, and we can justify it? We can point to things that have been introduced since our takeover happened. What's your view as a Chelsea fan? Do you think we've been hampered to stop us growing as quickly as others because it'll push some people out of the favoured 6?
I've had this on every pod I've been on, mate, and I understand it. But I'd say that you name me another Premier League club that's been sold because they've invaded a country. We went to the wall, and we've been sold to a bunch of American businessmen, shall we say. I'm not going to get into politics, but Chelsea's sale and subsequent sanctions were all done for political gain, and there's no question of that. I've never seen any evidence of it. I'm not suggesting there could be, but it stinks, and it always will stink. And Tommy Tuchel got divorced over it. His marriage went to shit. So, you know, I hear what you're saying, but there's no way in the world Chelsea Football Club have been treated favourably by anyone. No way in the world. People talk about that they sold the hotel to themselves, which was a financial thing. But to be fair to Chelsea, they built that hotel in '97, and you know Ken Bates had the foresight to actually utilise the land around the club. So I don't see that. I think Clear Lake have been very clever in terms of manipulating rules with long contracts and lower weekly payments, because I think people forget about outgoings at a football club aren't just about the transfer fees. Give an example. When we played Man United back end of last season, Rashford's weekly wage, perhaps he's not a great example, but Rashford is on the same amount of money per week as Neto, Madueke, Palmer, and I can't remember who else was playing that. But anyways, four Jackson. So those four are earning the same amount of money. So the finances in football aren't geared just around transfer fees. They've literally maxed out. And whilst they've spent all this money, people don't realise, I think since 2015, Chelsea have received 1.4 billion in transfer fees in. Then you benefit from Hall, Livramento. There's Chelsea players everywhere, and they've all come through the academy. So they are completely compliant, but it's a hugely high risk strategy. I was talking about a young team. This is part of the problem. You mentioned a B squad. The B squad, some of those players are nowhere near as good enough. There's a huge gap between each side and the rest of it. You know, we're playing teams like Noah. I mean, who are they? You know, you should be beating them. And so it's high risk what they've done to the club. I'm not going to diss them because I don't understand. I'm not clever enough to understand how it works. But I hear what you say, but that's always my stock answer, mate. I'm sorry, it's quite boring, isn't it?
No, you're right to defend your team. Did you have any questions, Mitch, for Simon?
Simon actually touched on something that I found interesting. I was going to ask him about it. The age of your squad, you've got the youngest squad in the Premier League, and I think people forget that.
Yeah.
How do you think your fan base has the patience to understand that? Or do you think, or are people getting a bit ratty with some of them because they're making mistakes, and then you turn around and say, but he's 19-year-old, you know?
It's a great question. And people like me, they do understand it. The Johnny-come-latelys, as we know, who, particularly with a club like Chelsea, populate so much space on social media, they're ready to buy players like FIFA, isn't it? One of you guys mentioned that you'd be happy where you are with top six at the end of the season. I thought we'd make a challenge for top four, and we still could. So if you take a step back, I think I'm fairly happy with where we are. You know, I'm not too disappointed. We didn't go up at the cup game up at your place, and that's another thing. You know, I was actually in Iceland. I didn't go up. I mean, I think Iceland's the only place older than Newcastle game, but the difference there, if you remember that game, you just on 2-0 up, very easy for you, wasn't it? It was a walk.
Yeah. Reserve keeper absolutely shit his pants
right there, but you know, you took a couple of players out. We took a few players out. It's miles difference. But it's absolutely right. It's again part of the high risk strategy, getting a young team and watching it grow. In fact, the state I'll do that on Tuesday night against the Bournemouth. That's what he said, something along the lines of, "This is tomorrow's today." Well, in tomorrow every time, you know, we've lost Thiago Silva, and at 40 years old, he was still a role player. You need experience in the side. I think you're a great example. Old heads, haven't you? You've got players that can help young players, and I think that's again where I would finish above us.
Good point. Good point. Steve, you got any questions before Simon disappears?
Not really. Just thanks for coming on, mate. It's great to have a different perspective, and thanks to Stu for inviting you on. And maybe the next time we play each other, we'll get you on maybe pre-match to have a discussion about where you think you're at and what you think the score will be. So if you're up for that, Simon, we'll get in touch with you, mate. I'll give you a follow on X.
I think it'll be squeaky bum time then, because I think we've got you last but one away game.
Yeah, that's right.
Away games are Newcastle and Forest, and again, everyone plays everyone, don't they, over a season? But we've got City away on Saturday, and City are just hitting form. And the other thing with young side, one last thing to say is, while you're in the pack, it's fine, but when you're chasing the pack, it's doubly difficult. Once you go out of that top four, trying to catch up and trying to do that's really tough. So, anyway, it's been really good talking to you guys. Thank you very much.
Great stuff, mate. Thank you very much, and great to have you on. Later on in the season. Take care, Simon. Bye-bye. Great to have him on. Thank you for that, Stu. Great to have a different perspective, and certainly somebody who goes home and away. It's always interesting. People often ask where Melly is. He's usually giving me grief on WhatsApp. The message he sent yesterday was a bit premature. That's all I'll say. Because I simply copy and pasted and sent it back today. Classic. He did stay at the end. I made sure of that. I said, I hope you stay until the end, mind, and then just repeated what he'd said to me yesterday. So, yeah, he's not got much to shout about, poor Melly, but we'll get him back on. I've always got an Arsenal fan who's been in touch, who's asked if he can come on. He lives locally, actually. He lives in the northeast, but he loves the podcast, loves watching it, doesn't comment in the chat, but he says, I'd love the opportunity to come on before the next leg of the semi. So I will bring him on in due course. We've got a load of questions in the chat, but I must keep me promise to a couple of people who chose to send us stuff either in the comments on YouTube or on our email address, which of course is nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Nick, good evening. He says, hey guys, new to the channel, great videos. Does anyone know what the plans are for the new training centre? He says, I watched a video on BBC about Bournemouth's new centre and it looks incredible. I think a lot of our success over the next few decades will depend on how much the Saudis invest in the grassroots in Northumbria and bringing in world-class coaches to bring on young talent brought from around the world. We hear a lot about a new stadium, but not much from content creators about the potential move to a new academy training centre. Thanks again. He says, I'm Nick from Edinburgh. He says, P.S. I used to be an Aberdeen fan, but I married Stan Seymour Sr.'s granddaughter. An early condition of the relationship was converting to Newcastle United. Lol. Nick, that's a great message. Thank you for that. I bet you Stan did convert a few people over the years. New training ground. Stu, I mean, what's your thoughts on that? Is that going to be a priority before the stadium, do you think? Or do you think it'll go hand in hand with the stadium? We've not really heard a great deal about it.
Now, there's been different whispers over the last 2 or 3 years. Initially, it looked like up near the airport, Wilton, the way it was nailed on. And then there's talk near Gosford Park. So there's nothing I could say definitively, but it's something that I believe the owners will want to do. And I think it'll come in time, but not for this squad. Even if they start building one now, it'll be 2 or 3 years anyway. So hence the main thing that they did was upgrade and make an immediate impact on what was a very tired training centre at Benton. So in a way, I can't answer the question because I can't say yes, they're definitely going to build it there or there, but they do want to be the best. Now, I was speaking to Mitch just before we come on, and to cheer myself up, I put on the 4-part series of the club from last season. And I just watched the first 5 minutes again when you got the chairman, Yasser Remain, and he was asked a question about what do you want and the potential, and he repeated, he says, I'm the same as all of us, I want to be number one. And he was classifying himself as a fan. He was a fan before he was the owner, for want to speak. And I don't think his mindset's changed from that. And I think if you look at how the boardroom has been added to, very, very, for me, strategically, I think things are off the pitch. Everything's getting into shape for what I think can be some monumental announcements in the coming weeks, months, and years. I believe they've got huge plans, not just for Newcastle United, but for Newcastle and the region itself. And of course, a successful Newcastle United is integral. And I know I'm drifting away from the original question, but this is why I don't think they'll let this opportunity go of us getting top four without supporting Eddie Howe in this transfer window. Because can teams like Tottenham and Manchester United, etc., be so bad next season? We've got a golden opportunity now to advance, and a successful Newcastle team on the pitch will generate more money anyway, which will then, going back to the original question, help finance training grounds, new stadiums, etc., and quench the thirst for it as well. So a long way of saying, no, I don't know exactly where the training ground is going to be, but I'm sure they will provide one at the top end.
Yeah, Mitch, is that a priority now, the training ground? Is it like the chicken and the egg? What comes first, the stadium or the training ground?
It probably isn't a priority, but it'll be on their minds. I think all of these things are always on their minds. And I know options have been looked at with land the Rubens have near the racecourse. I think there was a feeling from certain people within the club not so long ago that Sir John Hall's land up near Walsingham was the preferred option, mainly because of the proximity to the airport to make dealings and moving people around the country and around Europe easier. But, you know, whatever they decide on, it'll be more than world class. There's no doubt about that. And I think it's something with the longer term in mind. I think that's a more Vision 2030 kind of plan than it is a right now kind of plan.
Okay, City go 4-0 up. This is a one-way game, and certainly above us as well. But that doesn't matter. There's plenty time to go in the season.
Lots of football to be played yet.
Lots of football to be played, yeah. We've got over 800 watching jointly. Thanks. If you are watching on X, please jump over to YouTube, search NUFC Matters and hit the subscribe button. And just to thank you to everybody who tuned in and everybody who shared the show on Friday night, the Amigos. A record-breaking Amigos total. 52,500 people watched the show on Friday night. Incredible numbers, that. Ben Jacobs has to take a bit of credit for it, because when Ben goes on live and he retweets it, it absolutely goes mental, because people from all walks of life and all different clubs watch it. So that was a record-breaking attendance for NUFC Matters ever. So thank you for that. Beat anything in the takeover, you name it. It was phenomenal. So thank you everybody for that. Another question which came in was this one from David Cook. He says, "Hi Steve, question about the professionals. It has been said that Manchester United got a PSR allowance for the share redistribution. Would that also be the case for us when Amanda's shares have been sold to the Rubens and PIF? Thanks for your time." That's an interesting question, and probably ties in, Stu, with some of the notes you wrote down there and sent me this week about PSR and stuff. So over to you, Stu, first.
Yeah, well, what I wrote down, I don't even know where it is now, but it was, for me, it's a lot of kidology coming out of the club. You know, everyone here has the PSR, the SCR, like squad cost ratio, FFP, SMB, call it whatever you want. But we didn't, I'm of the opinion, I know I like to be positive, and I know I lost money saying that we're going to spend X amount of money last summer, but I'm of the opinion we didn't recruit a very sought after director of football who had turned Manchester United down and was what is known as, reputation wise, one of the best directors of football in Europe. How could we have enticed him to join us on the promise that you won't get now to spend in the next two windows? It doesn't make sense. That the guy has his own reputation, he has his own ego. And irrespective of what salary he's getting, I think he could get just as much other places, if not more. So he's come in with, for me, a remit to take us to the next level. And you can't do that if you're not allowed to spend money. So, like I said, with his reputation, and what he's capable of, and for different reasons, what the owners are expecting. I don't think they'll allow us to go a third window without actually improving the first 11. But I think it suits the narrative of them saying we don't have money, the cupboards are bare, etc. We can't spend, because if they start saying, yeah, we've got loads, then it goes back 3 years, doesn't it? And then the Newcastle tax comes in straight away. So it does suit the narrative that they can play properly. But I personally don't believe our owners are neglectful enough to allow this opportunity to get in the top 4 to slip out of our hands. And I know we've just dropped out of the top 4 with Man City going above us and possibly Chelsea. But even as Simon said, he favours us above them to finish higher in the table, and it's still in our hands. But if anything, look at yesterday's game. Had we won, even if we hadn't played well, it has been papering over the cracks. The team is running on empty, and we all agree that there is not enough quality off the bench to rotate the star players. And if we can see it, I'm quite certain the powers that be can see it as well. And I'm not going to go down the route of Gay money, but let's just say Mickey gets sold officially tomorrow, and there's rumours of Lloyd Kelly getting sold. Let's say combined that brings in 25 million quid, without boring everyone about amateurisation. But I think our priority has to be a right winger who can play on the inside. And if we've got to pay a January tax or a Newcastle tax, it's worth it. It will be worth it if it helps us get into the top 4. Because if we've got to pay an extra 10 million, that 10 million is the difference between finishing, say, 4th and finishing 7th. And that's the money you get for being in the league. The league payments are, I think it's 3 million a place anyway. So on that basis, the owners, I don't think, take risks. It's haram to gamble, isn't it? So they can't gamble. They're very, very calculated. And I genuinely believe there will be money at the disposal for this window if the right player becomes available. And so it's not me saying we're definitely buying someone, but I'd be surprised if we didn't. So I think the money will be made available, and they'll balance it out, because there was announcements saying that earlier this year that they would be talking, given the decisions on the new stadiums, etc. That will bring a big boost. As Mitch talked about on Friday, you've seen PAF being advertised, and that's just filling in space, but it's putting more money into the coffers. They're maximising everything. So those who say they've lost interest, they're giving as much as they possibly can, just not at the pace some of us want it to be at, but they're going as well as they can do. And I think they will give money, and it would be ideal to get someone like Mbeumo. We can all play fantasy manager and pick the player that we want to be in that position, and he probably ticks all the boxes, but you've got to have a willing seller as well. And he could also be sitting there thinking, well, what happens if Salah does go to Saudi for £500,000 or £1 million a week? Could I fit into that team? So there's a lot to consider, but with fear of repeating myself, I believe they will make money available if that right player comes along. And to get people in, you've got to get people out. And that's what we'll be seeing initially, to give us that, what's that phrase, wiggle room. So that's my answer to your question.
Yeah, but the question obviously about Manchester United, Mitch, is what David was getting at. I mean, about the Amanda shares that were sold to Ruben and PIF. What was your take on that?
Well, what's sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander, and if there is allowances to be made for reallocations of shares, we should try and take as much as we can. Though how much of that was also built in with that they got some allowance for exchange rates, because obviously the part owners are American and the guy buying is British, but I think was buying in euros. I mean, it sounds like they did the money exchange in a dusty, dodgy booth in Istanbul, really, doesn't it? I mean, it's quite remarkable that kind of thing can be done. And yes, it's not going to be a huge amount, but if it's there and it's available, let's have every penny we can have. This is where I think the best signings we could make are Chelsea's accountants.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from on that as well.
And to touch on what Stu's just said, it backs up what I was been saying all through. This January, we are opportunistic buyers. If the right deal comes along at the right time, combined with players going out, and I get the feeling that there is movement happening. There's too many little. Put it this way: there's too many little moving parts for that to be nothing happening at the minute. Now, whether it all comes to fruition, that's a different matter.
Yeah.
But I don't think we're quiet. I don't think we're doing nothing. And I think that's part of being ready to be opportunistic in this window. And I think it would be folly, having seen our inadequacies yesterday, it would be folly not to try and put at least somebody else into the mix in that team who could be a game changer that might make the difference between finishing 5th or 4th.
It'd be negligent, wouldn't it?
I think so too, Stu. I think I'd be disappointed. Yeah.
Okay, Newcastle United obviously losing yesterday against Bournemouth. Manchester City winning against Ipswich by 5-0. Still over half an hour plus injury time to play in that game as well. So Manchester City leapfrog Newcastle. But as I say, a lot of football to be played. Still 45 minutes of this show to be played after the ads. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. Contact them at their website, skipsandbins.com, or email www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickies.co.uk. Email them info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. Travel and Tourism Award winners 2024. 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges, all excursions included. Find them at their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. Their website is media-arts.co.uk. And we're also available as a podcast. You can find us on Sports Social, Podcast Network, iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel, then hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up that likes each video, and click share to share to your social media. Some Newcastle United events coming up. An evening with the entertainers, 24th of January 2025. Box office number is 0191 243 1171. Or website, Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. An evening with Lee Clark takes place on the 31st of January at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are available on Voucher or from newcastlelegends.com. An afternoon with Celeste Ferdinand takes place on the 6th of April 2025, 12 p.m. till 4 p.m, and that's at the O2 City Hall in Newcastle. Tickets from www.ticketmaster.co.uk or from Voucher. And did you get a book voucher for Christmas? Then why not buy The Entertainers, 1992 to 1997, Kevin Keegan's Legacy by Will Scott. Priced $18.99, also available from newcastlelegends.com. Okay, welcome back to the professionals. I did touch on this earlier, but Michael asks the question, what are the lads' opinions on people leaving the game early when we're not playing well or getting beat? Seems to be a big meltdown on X today regarding the issue. Michael, listen, I think we've discussed this many times on here at circumstances when Newcastle aren't doing well and people decide to walk out. I just felt yesterday, out of all the days to do it, en masse, that was not the day to do it. Newcastle's been superb, and I was a bit gutted, to be honest. I was gutted for Eddie, and I was gutted for the team. They still did the walk around the pitch and clap the fans who'd stayed. But from 75 minutes onwards, people were slowly filtering out the ground. And it's the kind of thing that when you see it on TV and it's happening at Old Trafford, we're all saying that shouldn't happen. This is ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. And we've just gone and completely contradicted ourselves by, doing it, on TV in front of, millions around the world. And away fans will have been saying exactly the same about us. So, I was annoyed, Michael. I really was. I was gutted. I didn't say anything to anybody. There was a couple of people having arguments about people leaving. One bloke who was sitting next to me was going, I can't see the game. And one bloke's going, what? And it just became an absolute, nightmare situation around the ground. But yeah, I don't agree with it, mate. I don't agree with it. Stewie, I mean, you pay your money, you take your chance, and you decide what you want to do. And some people go down. Some people get there 10 minutes late. They go down 10 minutes early for a pint, and then they leave 10 minutes early. So they're missing 30 minutes every game anyway.
Yeah, it's not for me or any of us to tell other people what to do with their money. It's their choice. But Newcastle historically have been a very loyal fan base. And I think especially yesterday on the back of 9 successive wins, it's one where the fan base in the ground should have showed a bit of unity and showed the support, because they've been fantastic, haven't they, over the last 5 weeks. And just to say, look, we're with you through the good times and the bad times. But to see people leaving yesterday, it is embarrassment. And if it's a night game, you can understand, because there is like the last bus to catch or the last train to catch. But at 12:30 kickoff, you've got nothing to catch apart from first orders in the bar, and you've got all day to drink. I get it that people are annoyed, they're upset, they've paid the money, they expect to be entertained, but it's not the theatre. Newcastle United isn't a choice; it's a life. It's a lifestyle, isn't it? You're stuck with it, and it gives off to the players who have bust a gut. Oh, we'll only support you if you're doing really well, and we're better than that. And it was very disappointing to see, and hopefully it's not repeated, because you're right, Steve, we're the first to laugh at other people. Must have been a fire alarm at Old Trafford, or there's been one at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium when they're getting thrashed and their fans are screaming out. We are better than that. And yesterday, it was embarrassing to watch it from afar.
Yeah, I mean, some people are saying it's a generational thing. Some people cannot endure. I mean, for me, it was like being back in the Steve Bruce era. I could have lain down on the front seats and the back seats behind us at 75 minutes on the clock because of the people that left. But you're saying, yes, it's a generational
I think there's a mix of all sorts going on, Steve. There's definitely a generational thing. So, and something I experienced is when we started the trust off and you start interacting with fans at different ages, different points, and you see generational change in the fan base repeatedly. And getting your head around how somebody else wishes to support or not is up to them. You're quite right. People pay their money; they can do what they want once they've paid their money. That said, those who want to poke fun at Sunderland, the only thing Sunderland have ever been better at us than is voting with their feet, and I mean that in the right way. That when they were really pissed off with their owners and their chairman, they just didn't turn up. And they've always been better at us than that, and making a statement. So we're taking the piss out of them for their FA Cup attendance. Is it hypocrisy to then do that and then look at our own ground at 75 minutes yesterday? Possibly. Is it hypocrisy for fans on social media to have a go at American fans for having tickets here, there, and everywhere through this week, when their tickets to boat and hospitality were their own hard-earned? Stop being gatekeepers. If you want to be a gatekeeper, make sure you stay for the 90 minutes. There's always another side to the argument. Disappointing, yes. I find it disappointing. I think I've said either on here or on Amigos. To my memory, I've only left the match early twice. And once when we were beaten 6-2 by Man United, and once because I had a Christmas do to get to elsewhere in the country, and I was on a promise, to be fair. And so, you know, it was, to my memory, that's the only 2 times I've gone early. But that's me. And what I do is what I do. And I'll do me and you do you. And that's the way I usually work in life for a lot of things. But we can't, as a fan base, get sniffy and become gatekeepers about tourists and this, that, and the other, and then see those pictures, because that's not tourists. That's not. That's not. You know, that's not people getting tickets off of StubHub. That's lots of fans deciding, no, I'm off. And so it is, I think, a little bit hypocritical to then criticise other things and other fan bases when you see that. Disappointing. But, you know, like I say, you do you, I'll do me.
Yep, Lee Jones asked a question earlier. He says, lads, do you think we need to roll the dice and accept the possible offers we've received for Miggy, Kelly and Target, according to different reports, to allow a couple to join the squad? And he also says, did yesterday show our lack of strength and depth with the players available to come off the bench unable to change the game? I mean, lots of talk as Manchester City goes 6-0 up now. Lots of talk, Stu, about Kelly in particular. Juve now being linked with a potential move for him as the Fenerbahce story seems to, you know, dampen down. We've now got another one coming up, and as Mitch says, there are a few things potentially, and you know, maybe going to happen over the next couple of weeks.
I think there has to be things happening over the next couple of weeks. I was speaking to the Heat earlier on today, and I thought it was pretty telling that when we were crying out for changes, the Miggy never got on the pitch. Longstaff never got on the pitch. Target wasn't in the squad, you know, and it's as if, like, okay, we're beaten. Why risk getting injured? And it's, I know you've got the business side and the football side, and Eddie Howe's always very, very vehemently arguing that he's purely for the football side. He'll play someone if necessary, but I think he's got an understanding that if he wants to improve the squad, they have to, even on a numbers basis, you've got a 25-man squad. If you're bringing someone in, you've got to get rid of at least one of that 25. So I don't think there'll be mass changes, but I think there's people there in the squad who he's, whether it's with reluctance, but I think there's an acceptance that if the right offer comes in, he will lose them in this window. But I'm sure it'll be on the agreement that there'll be that money will be made available to bring people in instantly, because we've all just been bemoaning the lack of squad depth. If you start getting rid of the depth and just maintain the first 11, as good as the first 11 is on their day, as good as anyone on their day, we've seen yesterday they don't have that day every single day. So if we're going to, shall I smile, Mitch, if you're taking a photo? Sorry, you lost me train of thought there. I think there's an acceptance that players have to leave, and he's always going to big them up in case they don't. He's not going to say, yeah, I want rid of that person. We know personally that if he could have, he would have drove St. Maximin to the airport or to the train station himself. But in every single interview, no, he's great, Max, he's great with the squad, and he wasn't. But I think there's genuine sadness. The same when Chris Wood left, he really didn't want him to leave, because he knows what he does behind the scenes, not just what he does on the pitch, but what he does again with the squad. But if we're going to have ambitions to challenge consistently the top four, we can't just keep having nice guys in the squad. We need winners. And is the people I mentioned, like the Longstaffs, the Miggies, the Targets, the Kellys, are they going to be capable of playing in the Champions League every season? Or is this now the time to get what we can for them? And I think the answer is pretty obvious now. I think there is the acceptance from Eddie Howe that people will go, but I'm quite sure he's promised that money will be made instantly available to him to benefit the squad.
Kelly's not getting his chances, Mitch, and when he's come on, I guess at the start of the season he's finding his feet. I mean, he's impressed me in his cameos in the last couple of appearances. I've got to be perfectly honest, but
one bad game. He had one bad game.
It does surprise me, Mitch, that he's potentially going to, hit the exit door when he's just arrived.
But the only clue you'll get off of anything anybody said recently is that Eddie made the comment, was it last week, about business decisions taking priority over certain things in PSR, and that tells me that there's potentially things like that are going to happen. And he never wants to let people that he likes to work with go. That's his style, and we know that. And also, he's never going to come out and openly criticise members of his squad, and I think that's why the squad react well to him. He runs a very tight ship in so much of that there's a lot of togetherness there, and he fosters that in a very, very clever way. But equally, I do think that if it is the first reports from Italy were that they were talking about €30 million for Kelly. If Paul Mitchell gets that, I'll come over and I'll build a statue for him myself. But I don't think we can ignore what effectively in PSR terms, as he was a free signing, would be a significant boost. Along with if Mickey heads out soon, as certainly certain things seem to be indicating, then we will have to reinforce the squad. There's no doubt about that. Now, how we go about doing that, again, over to Paul Mitchell. I do believe after yesterday, if you can't look at that as a ownership group, a manager and a director of football, and say, right, we need somebody to be able to bring off the bench that can create a bit of havoc, that can be a game changer. And do we need to think about somebody else into the defence if Kelly goes? I would suggest yes, because his versatility covers a couple of positions.
You got the sales will be back soon enough as well.
Possibly, you're right.
And Kraft's back as well. So, yeah. So, I don't think that's the priority, Richard. The priority, I think, is definitely we need more cover offensively.
We need a winger. We need a principally right-sided winger who can also cover inside and give an option somewhere else. That's exactly what we need, and he needs to be somebody who can break an opposition down, either by being ridiculously skillful or with blistering pace, one or the other. For me, that was crying out yesterday. Is we needed somebody with a bit of X factor coming off the bench, and it just wasn't there.
Just skip away, because now Man City above us, you can have all the bedwetters out saying that's it. Man City's next 4 games are Chelsea, Arsenal, us, and Liverpool. That's who Man City have to play.
So much football to be played still.
Yeah, so let's see where they are into that.
Where were we? Where were we 9 games ago, 10 games ago? It is so much can change in that time. I wouldn't get unduly worried about the fact we're still in the mix. Makes me happy. At this stage, we're not at squeaky bum time yet. We're just sort of cruising along, and so I think we've got a full week to take stock, but we've also got a full week to see what unfolds off the pitch.
Yeah,
and I think that's important. And as a fan base, we've got a full week to get over ourselves. I was absolutely grumpy, miserable, so-and-so yesterday at the end of the game. And like I'm sure many of you were. And I've had a bit of time to get over myself as usual. And by the time I've come to do the professionals, a bit of perspective and a bit of a deep breath and take stock of where I'm at, and we can see where we're at there.
Yeah, I wasn't too bad. I just went for a couple of drinks with Steve Hasty and then went for a steak with Warlass. So I was in a good mood actually by the time the night was out.
I tell you what, I did get an answer to last night. was, remember, somebody came around and said that they thought that was a picture of me in my Newcastle United shirt when I played football.
Yes.
Yes, I'm a young Aidan McCaffrey.
That's right. Brilliant, isn't it? Absolutely brilliant, that. I just want to point out as well, tonight we have got 7 o'clock. Those of you who couldn't get along to this, the Long Sands Lilac Lane and Chris Norris Band, thanks to Media Arts, they have put this video together of the night, so you can sit back and enjoy the night. It was filmed from the sound desk as well, so the sound is brilliant. So if you like a bit of the Long Sands, which I know you do out there, then tune into that tonight. And if you want to make any donations, I will check up afterwards. If you want to make any donations to that, I'll make sure that they find a way at the Cat and Dog Shelter. That night raised 1,600 quid. And Andrea Wiley was delighted to get that money in the bank. It's massively helped them. And we are going to be doing the Lee Clark event, which gets mentioned in the ad break. That's going to go towards the Cat and Dog Shelter as well. So keep your eyes peeled. Got a few things coming up for them, and we are having a meeting or two in the next couple of weeks with new dementia charities, because obviously Dementia Matters is no more. So we've now got a couple of dementia charities who've asked us to get involved. So me, Joe, and Leslie St. John will be going to meet a couple of those to see what we can do over the next 12 months for them. Good question came in from, I love this guy's name, Paulo Safarera, often in the chat. I hope I pronounced your surname right. Anyway, in your view, what is the potential difference from last January's transfer window from this window? We said the exact same thing last year and in the summer. We must buy, we must reinforce, and then nothing. So what is the difference? Is there a difference, Stu?
I touched on it before. I think now, if you go back 12 months, we're going through an awful patch of form. We're backsides handed. We're from teams like Luton and Forest, who weren't the Forest of this season. And it was just a case of stumbling through, licking our wounds and come out again. And I think there was a miscalculation on the PSL thing come the summer. But this window feels different. We're in a stronger position, and it's always good to improve from a stronger position than trying to play catch up where we are punching above our weight. I think and that's testament to Eddie Howe and the coaching staff. I think if you look at the wages that we pay and the squad that we've got, we shouldn't be in the conversation for top four, but yet here we are. And it will be a huge opportunity missed if they don't. They know the money that can come in for the Champions League. There's more money now with the new Swiss-style chess format. So there's more games to play. There's more revenue to be generated. There's more press conferences. So there's more sponsorships that can go on behind anyhow. There's more justifiable reasons to be able to increase our incoming. And that's what they keep talking about. They need to, and I don't want to make this all about Peter Silverson's lack of activity, because hopefully he's working fervently behind the scenes. But at the moment, we've got the Champions League money coming in this year, the Adidas money coming to this tax year that's just passed. For me, there's money there, but they're not going to just throw it away for the sake of doing it. And the recruitment has been spot on. There's been very, very few mistakes. If you look at since the PAF bought us, who we've bought, who we've recruited, and the fact is that they inherited a squad that was doomed for relegation and possibly even a second relegation. You know, it was the archetypical ghost ship that was just drifting. So of all of those players, who's still there that's starting? And it's a Shaw who's really not much of a starter now. I think you've got to say Botman and Byrne fully fit will be the starters. So we've in effect got a new team. We need a new squad. And you're talking about before about training centres. I was watching Man City going out before. They had a different sponsor on the back of their tracksuit tops going out. There's so many potential revenue streams that they can generate to bring money in. And if we go and spend, let's say, 50 million on a right winger or a forward or whatever, no centre forward's going to come and sign for Newcastle of any worth and play second fiddle. So it has to be someone who can play a right wing and then cover and then You might get Wilson for 2 or 3 games before he gets injured again, and then get him back again before his contract's up. For me, it stands out that we need to sign it, but not just for the sake of signing someone, and they won't do it. So if I'm more than certain they've got a list of 3 to 5 people who they think will improve the first team, and that's what we've got to do now, is improve the first team, and these people don't come cheap. So we can't keep buying potential and buying for the future. We need to buy for the here and now. And between now and the end of the tax year in June, they can announce 2 or 3 different sponsors that would cover any shortfall in the meantime. So you could say it's a blessing that they haven't done it and they're holding back for a reason. But there is more and more money coming in the club, and there's so much more that can come in. But again, it all goes back to successful Newcastle United on the pitch. And if they're not going to help fund that, then you can't get the benefits of the other side. It has to be both ways.
Simon says, where are those sponsorship deals, Stu? Adidas was 18 months ago, training kit sleeve sponsor.
Now, the Adidas didn't start till this season. They agreed 18 months ago, but we've only started wearing Adidas this season, which is this tax year. So that money's there. I don't know if they're getting any kickbacks for Adidas launching a new bit of merchandise every other week, but they're getting very, very well paid for having their Adidas sponsorship. And the Champions League money would have went into this year as well. So, but you have to also consider that there's more salaries to be paid. And for me, and I'm sure I'm not alone in saying this, let's say Miggy's on 50 grand, 60 grand a week. If he was to go and they give that money to Isaac and made him sign a new long-term contract, I think everyone's happy. But we need to start looking about, they have to be clever. And they'll be clever with me with figures, they'll be clever with me with balance sheets and everything else. But football's not one on the balance sheet, it's one on the grass pitch. And they need to have I keep using the word negligent, but it is negligent to Eddie Howe to expect him to get Champions League without improving the first team squad for 3 windows. I think it's imperative, and I'm sure they're aware that they need to do it this window. And it's glaringly obvious where the gaps are that need to be improved.
Yeah, I mean, Mitch, the sponsors, lots of people go on about a ground sponsor. I mean, I often think maybe they'll wait until they get the new ground,
Saudi won't sponsor an old ground.
Exactly.
They'll sponsor a very big, shiny new one, though.
Mm.
Yeah, simple as that. What do you think the difference is between, say, last January and this January?
One set of accounts better off.
Okay.
And well, as seen by the ridiculousness of the summer, we're not in as precarious a position as we were then. I think had we known how precarious things were, really would have maybe backed off a little bit. And on the back of the discussion you've just had, I think the executive at Newcastle United, who's under the most pressure at the moment, is still listening.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would agree, 100%. Spenny, if that's correct, I've just checked on Sky, Spenny. That is a classic. Amorim has come out with Manchester United and said, we are the worst team in the history of Manchester United. Wow. he could end up getting sacked, this guy, before the end of the
wants to be.
That sounds like somebody who actually does want the bullet.
That's hilarious.
I'm Portuguese, get me out of here.
What's going to come out with in his next interview? That Jim Ratcliffe, he smells. Brilliant.
Oh God!
You just answer that question, Steve. I think it was Tom Dixon about Amanda and Merdad. Was it Tom Dixon that asked the question? Yeah. Amanda and Merdad aren't interested in buying Spurs. They never are. We're interested in buying Spurs. They don't have the money to buy Spurs. What they are is, in effect, brokerage. To get people who can't afford to buy into Spurs. And they'll broker the deal and be rewarded financially for it. So just to clear up, when people, that's the job. That's how she makes her money, and that's exactly what she does. But I think there's strong rumours, if it's not already confirmed, that she'll be part of the PIF going forward in another room.
Correct. Yeah, it doesn't been officially announced yet, but there's a lot of positivity around Amanda appearing with PIF in a different role. Nothing to do with Newcastle United, but yeah, I'm sure we'll hear more about that from Amanda and PIF in due course. Derek says, question: do you think Man City are confident that the 115 charges are going to be thrown out, and that's why they're spending? And do you think FFP and PSR is finished, lads?
Do you want to go with that, Mitch?
Aye.
Because there's two ways of looking at that, isn't it?
That's one interpretation of it, is that they're so confident that they're now saying, and Ireland were ridiculous contract in this, that, and the other. I would be interested to see if they start doing it with other players. Because if they start doing it with other players, what they're doing is they're protecting their assets. And then either they're expecting a transfer ban, so they need to protect their crown jewels and keep them on long contracts so that nobody's going to try and tempt them away. Or if they're really fearing a relegation, you put your crown jewels on long contracts, and then when you're relegated, they go out on loan to friendly clubs around Europe or to other clubs within the Man City family. Girona, for example, who are flying high in Spain and have Champions League this season. You could stick them there. They're playing in Spain. They're playing in the Champions League, and therefore they're parked nicely somewhere where they're being looked after by people you know. And then when you get back to the top flight, happy days. However, relegation is a complex beast because we're the only football pyramid in Europe whereby the top flight is run separately to the remainder of the pyramid.
Yeah.
So a relegation would have to have the Football League playing ball. And at the minute, they're at odds about football money. Now, there's a deal to be done there, isn't there? So you never know how it's going to work out because these things can change at the last minute, and money's always the thing that makes the wheels grease. But there's always two ways to look at moves like this. If they start putting other players on long-term contracts, they're not confident. They think something's coming, be that a transfer ban or a relegation or what have you. I think it'll come out in the wash. But, I get that one way to look at it is it's them being bullish and saying, well, nothing's going to stop us. But it's also a risk, quite rightly, as Mark says there, when you start banging players on massively long contracts. And this is what Chelsea were saying on before. The Chelsea putting players on 8-year contracts. Yes, they can only go to 5 for PSR purposes, but they're still on long contracts. And some of those players will be hellish difficult to shift when they fall out with a manager or they fall out with a club, because they'll just turn around and say, well, I'm not going to get this money elsewhere. If you can't be forced to move and you're picking up your money and you're doing everything you can, you're turning up for training and you're doing what you're told.
It's a big gamble as well, Mitch, isn't it? If you put someone on 8 or 9 year contract, I know they can only show it over 5, but use Haaland as an example. Now, the way the Premier League is, if he's there for another 9.5, call it 10 years, he's going to see another 2 or 3 different managers. Are they all going to like him? He's going to get older. They're all going to go along with his ego and try and build a team around just him, or will they come in with their own ideas? I think the 500,000 reported that they're giving him is a hands-off to other people. Like the Real Madrids of this world who play the long game. They start the rumours in the press and, well, we're not ready for you this year, but next year, there'll be space in the team for you. Where now is what Manchester City said, if you want him, you're going to have to give him at least 500,000 because that's what we're paying him. Yeah. And I think any player in the right mind's going to accept it, aren't they, when they get offered something like that. So they could be protecting the asset that way. But also, I think Man City you've got De Bruyne, they've got an aging midfield. Gundogan, there's a few of them there that have probably passed their peak and on a downward momentum. So I think they're looking at the future, and players like Foden and Haaland are critical for their future success. And by tying them up, it shows potential new people or new incoming transfers. Look, these are committed to us. You're going to get the chance to play with him for as long as you're here. and you can understand, you can see both sides of it. But ultimately, I think we all agree it's just crazy money how much they're getting paid these days. It's mental.
It's a move that takes you into these sort of crazy baseball contracts.
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned it before. I don't know again whether here or on Amigos about a baseball player called Bobby Bonilla who used to play for the Mets, and he retired years ago. But the way he structured his contracts, every July they're still paying $1.5 million, and he's going to be being paid for I think at least another 5 years. And he retired ages ago because the way his contract was structured was to get around the salary cap, to stretch his contract out and his salary out over a number of years. So effectively, he's now being paid his pension.
But that's not new, you know. Umbro did that to Shearer.
They call it I think when his payments due in New York, they call it Bobby Bonilla Day. You know, and it's we're getting to that kind of weird stage where people will always find ways around rules like this, like PSR and salary caps and things like that. But then it starts to get a little bit crazy. Yeah, it's that's where we're headed, and it worries me a little bit. But as I say, I think it'll come out in the wash over the next couple of weeks. Because if City start to do it with a load of other players, you know there's something unfavourable coming their way.
Yeah, no. What about the junior team players, lads? Does that not impact PSR figures? So why are we not spending a fortune with an unrestricted area of the team that can have a major impact in the future? 6-0 to City, by the way, full time.
Well, they have been bringing in youngsters as well. But then is Newcastle for a youth player as an attractive proposition as what Chelsea is or Manchester City is at the moment? And they've seen players go to these clubs and then get big money moves elsewhere. So we're playing catch up, and it'll get to a stage where we will manage to catch up. It's just not going to be as quick as we'd all like it to be. And I know I rudely interrupted Mitch there, but this paying over a period of time, it couldn't be heard, but I'm sure Umbro did something like that to Shearer. They give him a contract, but they couldn't afford to pay him that much per season, but they didn't want him going to another bootmaker. And they give him a contract till he was like 40 or something like that. I'm sure someone will correct us if I'm wrong, but it's just something that I remembered. And there's a basketball player that you both know I've befriended over the last couple of years in person, Jaylen Brown for the Boston Celtics. He's the highest paid player in the NBA. He's on a contract that's about, I think it's $350 million over a 5-year period, but his first year is not as much. It just gets more and more and more. So it ends up in the last year, he gets paid like $100 million for the season. So it's progressive, but it allows them to, as they did, they won the championship last year, but to get more merchandise, and they're just banking on him being a star. It's a risk. And as nice a guy as he is, as I said to him, no one's worth that sort of money, and he agrees. But he said, would you turn it down? And I said, well, I've never been offered it, but of course you wouldn't, would you? We're in a world that doesn't resonate with the regular match-going fan or supporter, because these are just crazy numbers. They're getting paid. Even a half-decent player now is getting paid more than what most of us could ever generate as for life savings. Do you know what I mean? You could work for 5 years to what some people are getting paid in a week. So there's no connection like there was. You know, I know you get Joe on the channel a lot, and if you're sitting with Joe, he's one of the lads. These people are in a bubble and they are protected. But as long as the money keeps getting generated, it's only right that the players take the money. Why should the clubs keep the money as they have done in the past? You know, so this is where there has to be changes. There's got to be big changes coming, especially when you see teams like Arsenal and Manchester United, the ones who were front and centre of not being able to or trying to help the rules change to stop us spending crazy money 3 years ago. They're now struggling. They don't have they've got the resources to spend, but they don't have the financial fair play ability to spend. So if you look at this window, it's quiet. The summer window was relatively quiet. The last January was really quiet. And then it has the negative impact on the Premier League, and they are hurting their own brand by restricting people. And I know some people say we should do what Forest did and bring the players in and take a hit and build for next season. That'll never happen as long as we have the owners we have. It's not in their makeup to do something like that.
And I can guarantee if we did that, we'd have the book thrown at them, would be treated totally differently to how Forest and Everton would be pillaged. It would be their opportunity to say, see, we told you so. These are the bad guys. Look what they're doing. They're blowing a hole in what we want. And so we're going to hold them over the coals. And that genuinely it is where we're at, unfortunately. We are held to a different standard of account to everybody else in the Premier League.
Just to answer Kevin Smith there, look how much Villa have sold over the last 3 to 5 years. And even last year, they sold Diaby and they sold, was it Luis to Juventus? They brought in over 100 million, which allows them to spend, even with salaries, 300 to 400 million. So that's the difference. We don't have the players that can attract that type of transfer. And if we did, it's one of our golden boys and we don't want them to go. So we are playing catch up, but in fear of going round and round in circles, we need to generate more money. And we need to, by doing that, it has to come commercially. And then that points all back to Mr. Silverstone. Bring the money in, bring the sponsors in. And I think there will be a knock-on effect once the new stadium's announced.
So Kevin says, yours was, so there you go, that's the answer. We need to sell. I think we all realise with PSR and the restriction that we're in, we do need to sell. We've been told that plenty of times, I guess, by Eddie. And Kevin also says, whatever you say, lads, speed is our number one enemy. We lack anyone with serious pace at the back, and we will always struggle until we can rectify that issue.
At centre-back.
Yeah.
And that's where I think the recruitment of a right-sided centre-back with pace, with the long-term view of playing him alongside Botman, is the defensive change we need to make.
Okay, that's been a rip-roaring 90 minutes, more exciting than yesterday's, I have to say. Premier League are killing themselves, so it must change. Agree, Mitch, we will get far worse punishment. We must have to play the game until we can make money to spend. And Nick, whose question we answered earlier, thanks for being in the chat and being proactive tonight. He says, I'd let Isaac go for 150 to buy Delap and Buemo or Bakayoko.
That wouldn't buy his right testicle for me.
There you go. All
about
the pin. Yeah, he is.
If you look at the last game of the season, Steve, who did the chairman go straight to on the pitch? And it was to Isaac.
Yeah, exactly.
Straight to him, arm round him. I think he'll have not a contract to rival Hollands, but I think he'll be the highest paid player for Newcastle coming the summer.
Is this a question you can answer before we finish from David? He says, question, lads, have the Chelsea Hotels ownership changed yet?
I believe the paperwork's all done, yes.
Yeah.
All right, there you go. That's the question answered. So well done, lads. You got through them all. Brilliant night. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope it was more positive than some people would have expected, but we were fairly upbeat, I thought. Will the fans forum be the same? Will Darren be negative? Tune in tomorrow at 6 o'clock to find out. And Tuesday night will be a pre-recorded version of Talk of a Tune. Wednesday, to be confirmed, but probably Joe Allen maybe making an appearance with Geordie's here. Geordie's there if I can sort that out. And Thursday night will be Gibbo. Friday night will be, as usual, the Amigos. But thanks, everybody, for watching. That's another week done. Back tomorrow with the Fans Forum. Take care, lads.
Good night, everyone.